Price of Jeff Hurst, the Trevor Brooking and Billy Bonds, Paolo Di Canio, West Ham United. We celebrate our victories, we stick together in defeat. Proud of our history, West Ham United, more than just a podcast. More than just a podcast.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. This is more than just a podcast. It is season 13, it is episode 26. It's a new year, and we've got a special guest. And that special guest, you know I like finance. You know I spoke at the last one when the accounts came out just before the new year. It's Kieran Maguire of the award-winning podcast Price of Football. Welcome, Kieran.
Thank you very much, guys. Always a pleasure to have a chat. As West Ham were the first team I ever saw.
Uncle Terry.
Well, no, my Uncle Terry was West Ham. He was Millwall. My Uncle Tony.
Oh, was he?
He was West Ham. So he took me to see. Yeah, it was West Ham versus Arsenal. I think about 1971. West Ham 1-2-1. Yeah, great day out.
Oh, excellent. I should have said also, I mean, your other titles, university lecturer. What other things do you have? You appear on most the TV and radio most weeks. You helped with the government with the independent regulator. What other strings do you have to your bow, Kieran?
Well, according to Rick Parry, I've got no talent apart from self-publicity. So I wear that badge with pride. If you're annoying the establishment, then you're probably doing something right.
Yeah.
Pot kettle black there, I think.
Yeah. Well, also to keep me on the straight and narrow today is Nigel, because if I went off with finance, just with Kieran. So as I was just explaining to Kieran off air, Nigel is the complete opposite of me. On his thinking pretty much everything about West Ham, apart from we do support the same team. So he will keep me on straight and narrow if I go a little bit bald friendly in this interview. Isn't that right? Where are you? What are you doing, Nigel?
I'm in my shed.
And I didn't have the shed man jingle ready for you. I know. Come on, it's the first day of the year.
One job. I know I've not been around recently, but you had one job.
I know, I have one job. I'll tell you what, I'll get it. I did have another jingle, and I got this jingle just for Kieran, right?
Hey kids, what do you think about finance?
There you go.
That's news to me.
Do you see that catching on? Do you want to get producer Guy to use that on Price of Football? Because I can lend it.
I'll ask him to get in contact when we finished all the outstanding work. I'll put that down as a possible.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Anyway, we're here to talk about finance, Kieran. Obviously, I get very excited this time of the year, a bit like you, when I get a little tip off that. That the accounts are going to come up, and the club very kindly giving me the accounts a few hours before so I can analyse them under embargo. But they came out on 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
On what was it? Was it 29th? I think last week.
Friday. Yeah.
And quick view, not a lot of difference. The turnover was down 16 million to 237 million, down from about 253. That 16 million was easy to understand because we dropped 7 places from 7th to 14th, and it's worth £2.1 million a place. That's about 15 million. And we had 2 less televised games. We had 23 the season before. We only had 21. They're worth about 1.2 million. So
is that Premier League games?
That is
all games.
No, just Premier League games played in the UK, I should say. So you get a facility fee from
so 23 Premier League games, West Ham.
In the season before last season.
But 21 last season. 21.
21 last season. Yeah, we are. We're popular on the box, you know. It does help that everyone gets a minimum of 10, by the way, especially with, you know, the Prime now and etc. So yeah, West Ham. It's good to watch on the box. Yeah, but Premier League. So really, if you look at it, I'm sure you'd agree, Kieran, ticket revenue's not much different. 41 million. It was 41 million the season before. Interestingly, before COVID and Europe, our maximum ticket revenue was 27. So you could argue we could drop another 13 million pound per year if we didn't have Europe. Again, we haven't really risen the tickets very much in the last 5 years, only by, you know, just under inflation, 5 or 6%. Commercial revenue, sponsorship only grew 400,000 to 35 million, and club retail slightly fell by a few thousand to just under 13 million. So my first question, Kieran, is, you know, where West Ham sit in those turnovers and ticket and commercial revenue. Is that about par of where we are in the league?
Yes, I think you've got to split the Premier League into three. There's the big six, and we all know who they are. Then we've got what I'd refer to as, I don't know, West Ham's a working class club, but what I'd refer to as the middle classes of the Premier League. So the likes of, you know, Villa and Newcastle and West Ham and so on. And if you take a look at the commercial income, West Ham generated around about the same as Leeds. Leeds are a big club, as we know, a bit more than Leicester, around about the same as Everton. You know, clubs that have been established in the Premier League, clubs that have achieved things historically. And then you've got sort of the third part of the Premier League, Bournemouth and Brentford and, you know, Southampton, Wolves, Palace, Brighton. They tend to be generating sort of in the 18 to 30 million. So West Ham have shifted themselves into that sort of towards the top part of that those middle classes, on the back of the move to the new stadium. Now, you know, there's good bits and bad bits about that move to the new stadium. Again, if you take a look at the ticketing income, it's good by the standards of those clubs that I refer to, but Spurs bring in well over 100 million, Manchester United bring in 120 million. Arsenal in a good year will be bringing in 100 million and so on. So there is a significant gap.
So when you look at the ticketing for the size of the stadium,
yep,
compared to the same clubs with the same size stadiums,
yep,
we come out lower down, I would imagine.
Substantially. If you take a look at the likes of Liverpool, Chelsea, Spurs, they're bringing in around about £1,500 to £1,600 per fan per season. Now, West Ham are probably bringing in, looking at the figures here, around about 600, because season ticket prices are lower. You know the details far more than I do, but Liverpool, for example, less than half their tickets for each match go to season ticket holders, because they've got a fan base who are coming from Ireland and Scandinavia and God knows where else, who are prepared to pay 60, 70, 80 pounds a ticket, whereas West Ham, probably 80% of their tickets, if not more, are going to season ticket holders.
More.
Yep. And yeah, within that you've got concessions, you've got senior citizens, you've got kids as well, and that means that there's a substantially lower take per match. And I think there's an argument for saying, well, you know, hooray for that, because otherwise it's costing you money.
Yeah. I mean,
well, my season ticket's £350.
Yeah.
Wow.
And some of the juniors
that's
still
amazing.
Some of the juniors are still paying £99. What the board would say, Kieran, is it's family affordable football. What people like Nigel would often say is, you've priced it for, you know, you've capitalism at its best. You've priced it for demand, right? If you charge the prices of Spurs and Liverpool and Arsenal and Chelsea, you wouldn't sell out every game.
I'd say my ticket is priced equivalent to the view from Upton Park, i.e., my ticket would have been on Tesco's on Green Street, or sorry, on the Barking Road. So
Would you pay more though, Nigel? Would you pay?
well, I used to pay for
£800?
2 season tickets.
Yeah.
At Upton Park, a child, a young adult, and my ticket, which was a full adult, I used to pay. When the last season, I paid £1,050, I think. Now for 2 adults, it went up obviously this season. I paid £700 for 2 adults, so I'm paying the club nearly £400-500 less a year than I did at Upton Park. But I'm getting the equivalent view. I.e., Upton Park, I sat 30 foot in the air and 10 foot from the pitch. Now I sit 400 foot in the air and 400 foot from the pitch.
And I think I pay about, I can't remember, about £765 a year, being on the lower tier next to the away fans by the corner flag. So, I suppose, look, Karen Brady knows what she's doing. She's priced it. If she thinks she could get away with charging more, let's be honest, she would charge more because that revenue would go to spend more on players and let the club do more. We've probably priced it accordingly. But anyway, let's move on from that. One thing I'm interested in, the bit I haven't quite understood in the turnover, and maybe you can explain this to me, Kieran. We were in the Europa Conference League and we won it last season. And I know that you get prize money up to about 20 million euros. And in the accounts, they said the last bit of the prize money, the actual for winning the final, is deferred to next season. But the rest of it, we should have got all the other bonuses. We also got a coefficient bonus for being, I think we're up to 50 points now because we've played 3 seasons in a row in Europe, so our coefficient score is going up. I think you get 3 points for every win, and then more for winning the group, and then you get a TV pool bonus on top of that. What I haven't been able to work out in the accounts is where have they hidden or shoved in the European parts into these accounts? What's the tricks they use, Kieran?
It's all in the broadcast revenue.
Right.
So that will be both from the Premier League and from UEFA. If you go back to 2020, for example, West Ham made £83 million from broadcast income, and it was 148 in 22-23. So that's partly due to there's no rebate. There was a rebate in 2020. It was the start of COVID. Remember, things were quite messed around. And it's partly to do with more matches. For West Ham to be 21 matches is a good achievement, because the way that the system works is that you get nothing for the first 10 matches, and then you get an extra 1.2 million for every match after that. So you're probably making more money from a live TV match than you are from the additional ticket sales, the non-season ticket sales.
My sources say, us getting knocked out at the semi-final stage, Europa, was far more financially rewarding than winning the Europa Conference League final. Far more rewarding. So even though we got knocked out at the semi-final, it was.
We'll see, because of the extra revenue taken from the shop by selling the shirts and all the other ancillary.
Afterwards, you're right. Yeah, next season.
You don't sell I got to the semi-final shirt.
No, you're right. You're right. We might see a little our friend Gavin. So if we look at the breakdown, our operating costs were post for last season at 190 million, or 190.6 to be precise, on 236.6 million revenue, leaving an operating profit of 48.4 million. But of course, that was completely wiped out with our big spending over the summer of 22. I think it was 189 million or something, and that turned into an amortization figure of 65.3. So that left us a loss of 18.3. Is that wise to spend that much on on transfers, Kieran, in your view?
You just won a cup in Europe. It's worth it.
Yeah,
Yeah, because remember you've got new owners. So, a
I know,
new
but
part owner
um,
has come in.
if you think about it, that unfortunately, that summer we didn't do a lot of. I mean, we bought Skamaka, and you could argue we wasted a bit of money, but with ones that didn't turn out. It was the summer that's just gone where we actually made some really good signs like Kudus and.
We bought Paqueta the year before
We
as well,
did
Sean.
we did right by Paqueta, and he's come good, hasn't he? So you're right on that. There was at least one good one. So 18.3 million loss, Kieran. The biggest question everyone wants me to ask you is about FFP. Now, I've done a little figure on the back of a fag packet to say our 3-year rolling loss after these accounts have come out is 32.9 million. I'm hoping that's right. I hope your spreadsheet agrees.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, that target was made.
So Premier League FFP, no problems, because I seem to remember you can have a £105 million loss over 3 years, so we don't even get near that, yeah?
Well, it's not quite as simple as that. You're allowed to lose 15 million in the Premier League, but if the owners put in money, the first 90 million pounds that the owners put in the form of shares counts towards FFP. So that increases your allowable losses from 15 to 105. Yeah, that's where this figure of 105, which is quoted all the time.
So how do we get around that? Because obviously we haven't put in any shares in the last year. In that year, the money came in with Kredinsky the year before.
Well, because it counts over 3 years. So the money from Kredinsky still counts towards
so 125
the overall calculations.
million rights issue counts over the 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So
and that will account for 23, 24 as well.
Premier League tick, not a problem. So if we go to UEFA, just look at the losses. My understanding it's 60 million euros without further injection. And that works out at 53.6 million you're allowed to lose over 3 years. Again, from outside, it doesn't look like we get anything close to that with 32.9 million over 3 years.
Yeah, and the other thing to note about UEFA is that they've now brought in wage controls. Last season, you were limited to, you couldn't spend more than 80 quid on wages, agents' fees, and
so that's what I was about to get to.
Okay, cool.
Because that is the one that I'm told by my sources close to the board. We are right up to the limit. So I think my understanding is this season, because it was for last year, it was 90%, and next season it's 80%. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's going 90, 80, 70.
Yeah, so it was 90 last season, or ready for this season.
Yeah.
80 for next season, 70 for the season after that.
Yeah,
and as you say,
correct.
Turnover on wages, transfer, and agent fees. So I've done the quick sums, and I know this is the impossible bit, but I just wanted our listeners to understand this. So if our wages for last season were 136 million and something, and our amortization was 65.5, for me that is over already, right? 202 million. And then you have to work, and this is the difficult thing, and I don't know whether you've got some formula to do this. You've got to then try and work out what are non-player wages, like Karen Brady's, and virtue spending that you can take off. Is there some equation you can estimate what virtue spending and non-player wages is for a club?
Yeah, as far as West Ham is concerned, they've got a Category 1 academy. So what you do is you look at other club accounts. So Villa say it costs us 14 million a year to run our academy. So West Ham, you'd expect it to be that, around about that. The women's team, it loses a bit of money. It loses less than £1 million a year. So it's neither here nor there.
3 million, I was told once that it costs to run the women's team, but whether that's true or not. Yeah.
And then you've got sort of the community schemes which the clubs run, which are partly funded by the Premier League anyway. And they are absolutely fantastic. I don't know whether you've seen them in operation, but they really make a difference. They make a difference to kids. They make a difference to blokes of my age. And
West Ham. It's the one thing they are big on the community programs.
Yeah. So sort of you do that, and then you look at sort of player sales as well. And remember, of course, this year you've got a very big Declan Rice shaped get out of jail free card.
Isn't that next season though? Because it didn't appear in the count. So I assume for this, if we qualify, I know this is heady heights, right? Qualify for Europe
Yeah,
for a fourth year running. All we've got to do is finish top 5, win Europa League to get in Champions League. If not, top 7, like you guys at Brighton to get in the Europa League or even the Europa Conference League next season. Obviously. These FFP rules will apply. Now, my understanding, and this is one of the things I wanted to ask you, is the Declan Rice 100 million, and let's just take the 100 million, not the 5 million add-on.
yeah.
Will be booked in 1 year as a straight profit next season? Is that correct?
That we booked into the 2023-2024 accounts.
So you can't spread it over 5 years, even though you spent your money.
No.
That's weird, isn't that?
That's
An accountancy.
The lunacy of accounting for you.
Right.
And the other thing to note is that
so we're going to make a massive profit next year, almost definitely, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
UEFA do their calculations from the 1st of January to the 31st of December, which doesn't tie in with the accounts, which is a pain in the backside for anybody trying to work out how close they are.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I just add that Conference League this season depends on Liverpool winning the trophy now?
Oh, really?
Well, because to qualify for the Conference League is via winning the League Cup. And the teams that are left in the tournament, excluding Liverpool, ain't going to finish in a European place.
Okay.
So you got Chelsea, Fulham and Middlesbrough left in the tournament as well as Liverpool. So technically, if you're a West Ham fan, you want to play and maximise our chances of, and a Brighton fan, I would have said as well, then realistically, we've got our wash our mouths out with soap and water and hope Liverpool win it.
Yeah, and you've got to hope that Arsenal or Manchester City win the
FA Cup.
Champions League.
Yeah, Champions League
because
as well.
That means that'll increase the chances of having 5 teams in the
yeah.
Champions League next season.
Yes,
And that could be us. You never know, Nigel. Could be us.
Dream on.
One thing that our listeners want to ask you, and you might not be able to ask it, with the information available this January, right?
Mm-hmm.
My sources have said we are up to the limit of FFP for UEFA on wages ratio, and therefore we've got a sell to buy, and not just from a point of view of getting player sales in, but actually getting people off the wage bill. From the information, and I think you've been quoted elsewhere going, sure, West Ham have got no problem, should have no problem in buying in January. I don't know if you've been misquoted. From the information you know on this FFP, what do you make of West Ham's position to spend in January?
Well, as I just mentioned, the UEFA rules go from the 1st of January to the 31st of December. So I'm more concerned about what's happened in the calendar year 2023. Now, in that calendar year, the sale of Declan Rice means that West Ham are clear for the calendar year 2024.
Might be just a bit disingenuous on the it's not financial year, it's calendar year. Sorry, I got you now.
Yeah. So I don't see. That's why I don't see there being a problem.
And when do they have to declare it? So when do you have to send your finances off to UEFA? Is there a? I
think it has to be reasonably early in the year, because UEFA assess the figures over the course of the summer, and that's when they make their rulings as whether or not they're going to give clubs, either fines or squad limits, or the worst sanction is that they get kicked out of the tournament. But we've seen quite a few Italian clubs deliberately break the rules in recent years because they can't be asked playing in the Conference League, so therefore they break the rules, and if they finish sixth and they go, because West Ham will still get 50,000-60,000 turning up on a Thursday night, whether it's Europa League or Conference League
or Brighton.
And Italian fans, they're
fickle,
more reluctant. Yeah.
Cool. All right, that's really useful. I didn't know that. So that's interesting. I might have to.
So,
go back
so
to
the clubs then have to file. So technically, if you're playing in European football, so the club does its year-end accounts to HMRC,
Yeah.
and then separately, then do they have to supply accounts for the calendar year to UEFA?
Yeah, just creates a load more work.
Right.
It's,
Okay.
Yeah,
which-
interesting.
Keeps the
which
accountants
I-
busy.
Well, yeah, I'd rather money go on football.
Yeah.
Right, let's move on to wages. So wages were only slightly up, £1 million, 136.8, up from 135.7. How does that compare to other clubs? Where are we? Are we in the top 6 of wages? I must admit, I live in a West Ham bubble, Kieran, so I don't look at other clubs.
Well, West Ham's wages they're the same. They're broadly the same as where they were in 2019. So for the last 5 seasons, they've had a slight dip due to COVID and people not working. But if we compare to West Ham, 136, 137 million. We then go to the big 6, and that's when you start to see, so Manchester City, 423 million, Manchester United 331, Liverpool 366, Chelsea 340.
Who's after that that's closest to us? I seem to think Everton spent more than us in wages. I don't know if that's...
Yeah, Everton were 162. I mean, what happened with Everton was a new owner came in, thought he could buy success, and didn't work out. So the closest to West Ham would be Villa, 137.
Yeah.
Which is exactly the same. If you look at Newcastle's went up to 170.
Wow.
But remember that every time you fill your tank, you're contributing towards Newcastle's wage bill.
Yeah.
Leicester was 182.
Wow. That's just...
So West Ham had fallen behind. I think 2019, 2018, they were reasonably competitive with,
what is
again,
that
sort
ratio?
of that
I know,
middle.
It's one thing I didn't look at, but I know you'll know the ratio because it's in your spreadsheet. What's our ratio turnover to?
58.
And that's pretty healthy, isn't it? What's the target for a good run club to be at?
And anything under 70 is UEFA's belief. You had Newcastle who were spending £95 on wages. Forest got promoted in 22, which is and they spent £197 on wages for every £100 that came through the door. Yeah, that's just an insane way to run an business.
what a lot of fans look at. So when you look at that, so laymen like me that are not, figure people, we look at that and go, how can they do that under FFP? So how can Chelsea constantly buy players? How can Newcastle do what they're doing when the clubs like West Ham, our owners come out and go, to Sean, it's FFP. We can't kick on this January because of FFP. We've got to stay within the rules. And I'm all for staying within the rules. I believe football clubs shouldn't be bankrolled by ownerships at all. That every football club should spend the money it generates through its football arm rather than through its ownership arm. But how do they do it and get away with it as such? Because so far only Everton have been whacked.
Yeah. Well, I think if you take a look at those 2 clubs you mentioned, I'm a Brighton fan. We probably hate Chelsea more than we hate Crystal Palace these days.
Well, you should love them, the amount of money they gave you.
Yeah, it's just the way that they did it. It was just sort of just Billy Big Bollocks, wasn't it? They came along and said, right, we'll have him. So we took 9. When Potter left, 9 members of staff went with him.
Yeah.
Just ripped it. And if nobody actually minded him going to a bigger club. And we all know where we are in the pecking order. It's just the fact that it ripped the heart out. But in the case of Chelsea, for all of Chelsea's faults, what people don't realise is that they're absolutely brilliant at selling players, especially players that have come from the academy. So they rinsed Manchester United for 60 million for Mason Mount. They had Tammy Abrahams. They had Tomori, they had Guehi, they had Ruben Loftus-Cheeks. And you go through this list of players. Chelsea have had player sales which have generated twice as much income over the last decade as any other club in the Premier League, and it's that money constantly coming in because there's a Chelsea academy in Exeter, there's a Chelsea academy in Carlisle, there's a Chelsea academy, and they use the academy as a way of generating money. Yeah, they're not in. I'm not a big
years
fan of the
ago,
academies.
a few years ago, when Chelsea had like 30 players out on loan, so
Yeah.
there's a thing where you look and people, a Chelsea using some farm, which it looks like they're doing, and in a way now, listening to what you say, I'm thinking, well, they've been clever with it, because
Yeah,
what
they
they've
have.
realised is they're not bothered if these kids progress to the first team or not. It's can they make money out of them? So some of the smaller ones will be sold off cheaper. Get in the first team, we can get 40, 50 million. It's pure profit.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about academy players. They cost, they go into the books as nothing. So when you do sell them, and you look at the case of West Ham with Declan Rice and Aston Villa with Jack Grealish, it's 100 million plus pure profit.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring us. It's not a Chelsea podcast, as I would say. It is a West Ham podcast. I'm going to bring us back to wages. Karen Brady took a pay packet home of 1.37 million.
Brady out.
Down from 2.24 million the year before, and that was mostly down to a bonus. She actually got a bonus for introducing Daniel Kredinsky into the club, as she did Trip Smith before, Kieran. 1.37 is approximately what she, if you not 2 seasons ago, is approximately what she earned before. She gets a lot of grief for what she earns because of all the other stuff she does. Is that about average for a chief executive?
That only works 2 days a week.
Well, that's a bit unfair, Nigel. You don't know if she only works 2 days a week. Let's just say she has other interests as well, Kieran. Don't get involved in that argument. But it's what you do, not how many hours you do. Is mine. But anyway, for example, what would the chief executive of Brighton earn?
He's
Paul
on
Barber,
almost,
isn't it?
Paul Barber. He earned almost 3 million last season,
Right.
and he's worth every single penny of it because
There you
he's
go.
absolutely brilliant at what he does.
So it's not unusual to earn, if she is part-time, like Nigel said, because she is in the House of Lords and does apprentice and everything else. 1.3 million could say it's value for money.
Oh, behave.
Well, if she negotiated that deal to rent
She
the
did.
London Stadium, then it's worth every penny.
Well, she did, and her name's on it. So it's
Yeah.
funny enough. It's a great link because obviously the figures came out. I think it was 3.6 million, almost 3.7 million in rent, almost the same as the year before. They did have to pay. I don't know if you saw the little.
I saw that. Yeah.
They tried to
Yeah.
hide it, by the way. I was pulled
Yes.
off and go, shh, we don't want to talk about this. So they've paid 3.94 over the last 2 years as a windfall tax. Because Daniel Kredinsky bought in a rights issue 27%. Now, there's a little asterisk by that saying it's in dispute. And in fact, it is going through the courts at the moment because they've used the figure that Rothschild's put together and come up with a completely different, you'll be surprised, a more expensive figure, which West Ham don't agree with.
Yeah, that sounds right.
But 4 million doesn't sound very much. And some people have said, and I'd like to get your take on this, why are the owners not paying the windfall tax? Why is it the club paying it?
Because the contract was with West Ham or WH Holding Limited
exactly.
and the landlord and the local authority with regards to that initial. So it wasn't with the club owners. The contract was between the football club and the lessor. So therefore the fine has to be paid by the lessor.
And you still fit at £3.7 million. I know we've asked you this before, but I'll just check on it because it causes a lot of friction with some elements of the West Ham base. Still value for money, still a deal of the century.
Oh yeah. Because it's a 700. It costs £700 million to convert the stadium.
But when take that aside, when does the stadium? Bearing in mind it was a 99-year deal, so we've got 92 left.
Yeah.
The rent goes up every year. When does the stadium actually become a problem with the rent. So when you look at other clubs and what they spend on their stadium and infrastructure, and that's the way I look at it. If we say West Ham spent £4 million on the stadium running costs, which is basically what the rent is, because that's all we cough up, what do other clubs spend on their stadiums?
If I take a quick look at Arsenal, just call it
it's an equivalent stadium, bit better, I would say, but
Arsenal's was about 16 mil. So
right, okay,
that was the cost in their accounts.
Yep.
But that includes all of their infrastructure spend. So let's say that 2/3 of
I
the
assume they offset
is-
some of
is-
that with the catering income, though, that they receive,
Yeah,
which we don't get.
I mean,
obviously.
so that goes into their commercial income pot.
So it doesn't. It's hard to break down. On
it's
how-
hard to decipher because obviously we pay a fixed rate for our stadium, which goes up. But in 40 years'
Index
time,
linked.
yes, in 40 years' time, though, we could be looking at paying, I don't know, 30, 40 million a year to rent that stadium.
But how much will your match day income be in 30 or 40 years? Because that's realistically going to be index linked as well. So if it goes hand in hand with increases in the money coming in, I still think it's a very good deal for the football club.
Yeah. There's a bit of an exclusive for this podcast.
For the business club.
But the naming rights are not going too well, Kieran, because the London Stadium, by the way, interesting. I know that the Baroness, and your Baroness, not our Baroness, won't be happy, but the London Stadium 185 accounts are coming out tomorrow. So we'll have to see what's in them. I'm waiting to read them. But apparently the London Stadium or the LLDC are trying to give away stuff that they've already sold to West Ham in like naming rights and so advertising rights around the stadium. That we've got all these extra rights that we bought, which is why we're paying 3.7 million. It's not just index linked. We've said, oh, there's this itinerary, and they've tried to take some of that back and say, yeah, well, we're going to give that to the naming rights partner. West Ham and go, no, you're not.
You got a contract.
Yeah, no, you're not. You agreed that. It's in the addendum. No, you're not. You sold it to us. We're not giving that back. No way, Jose. And of course,
it's a bit like having a marriage where you realise you made a mistake, but for whatever reason, you can't get a divorce.
Yeah, well,
that sounds like me supporting West Ham, Kieran.
Yeah, but at the moment there is.
My God, you've nailed it.
There is another disagreement at the moment about how the naming rights would be split, because there is a legal definition in West Ham's way. They believe they get 50% of everything over 4 million over the life of the contract, while the London Stadium or the LLDC have interpreted it that it's 4 million a year. Now, of course, your legal friends have said, what do they say, Kieran?
It depends.
It depends. Which version? So here we go. We're going to probably go to courts to see what judge on what day decides which interpretation he wants to say. But anyway, let's have the...
Well, quick question for Kieran. As a Brighton fan, obviously you play at the Amex. Is it still the Amex?
Still the Amex? Oh, yeah, very much
so. But which is obviously American Express. Now, it's always been that.
Yeah.
Now, do you think, so the way I've always seen it is a stadium like the London Stadium, and in regards to Tottenham's as well, in a way, is that you had your sponsors lined up before you moved in. So you moved into the Amex Stadium, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So therefore, it's always been us football fans. We're sticklers for a name. I still, call Bolton Stadium the Reebok.
But some people say the Olympic Stadium.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when a stadium tries to be rebadged, as which the London Stadium's now got a name, obviously the London Stadium, that's a big devalue, surely, in
you're
what
absolutely
people
right.
pay.
Yeah, Yeah, because I'm entirely with you, Nigel. It's the Reebok to me. It's the Rico for Coventry City.
Coventry, yeah.
It's now the University of. No, it's the Coventry Building Society Stadium or something like this.
Oh, wow.
So unless you get those naming rights sorted very, very early, then their value tends to decline. I know that Spurs were very confident of having a £20 million a year deal shortly after the stadium was opened. Now, for whatever reason, could be that the owner or one of the owners of the club was just trying to. He's a tough negotiator, and people have just walked away from the table. For all I know, that's not come to fruition. And now what they're being offered is far, far less. So you either get in early, or you have to accept that it's a short-term deal. It's not worth a lot of money, because there's a so what factor.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's memories are created at stadiums, but for me it will always be the Amex, because it was the Amex. And when we got promoted, and when we beat Chelsea 4-1 last season, when Potter came back, that's what it gets known as. If it's been through 4 or 5 incarnations, that magic, that association with the brand disappears very, very quickly.
Question, Kieran. Would you swap if you could transplant the London Stadium to Brighton with its 62.5 at the rent that you're paying, would you take it?
No, because I like being close to the pitch.
Okay,
Same as
an
Nigel.
honest question.
And look, Sean, you probably never went to the Withdean.
I went past it. I know the Withdean. I used to go down to Brighton. I know the Withdean.
Yes, these Brighton fans that sat at the Withdean.
You couldn't get into Brighton the day that they had a match. The whole place came to a standstill.
So, yeah. Then again, I stood on the broken terraces of the Goldstone.
Anyway, let's move it back to finance. Kieran, just before we move on from directors, as far as I can tell, no dividend was paid, no interest was paid to any directors, no loans are owed to any directors anymore. There is no. They never took any money out in interest, dividends, and they haven't loaned any money in the last financial year.
That's correct. David Gold and I think one of the two Davids did once go on to TalkSport and say, we've never taken a penny out of the club. Yeah, in the form of dividends or wages, and that's
correct.
Technically correct.
But at the time they said it.
But they took £20 million out of interest. We all know that.
Yeah. So, but that's now stopped. So the interest, which peaked at 3 million in 2016, is now zero.
Right. So I want to talk about bank loans. So people get confused with net debt, and when you read the net debt, and there's all different ways to look at debt, and obviously debt technically is the season tickets, our bond holders, and other things. But in the accounts, it talks about the £55 million loan from MSD Holdings, Michael Dell, which was paid off in August.
Yep.
A new overdraft from Barclays Bank. We don't know if they've drawn down on that. So it said on the MSD that a final interest was paid of £945,000 on the 7th of August.
Yep.
Now, when you look at that on 55 million, that's only about 1.75%. But when you look at what other interest was paid in the year, it was 5.88 million, suggesting closer to 10%. Will we ever know how much interest we paid on the MSD holdings? I think I've heard you say before the average for these kind of loans is around about 10%.
I think there is a breakdown. If you go to one of the notes, so West Ham had a total interest cost of around about £18 million in the accounts in 2023. But a lot of that it's not real interest. It was technical players, on player transfers.
Yeah, I read that. Yeah. So now we're with Barclays Bank.
Yeah.
Does that typically, what do they charge for their overdraft if we use it? Are they a lot less? Are they sort of high street rates for football?
Yeah, it will be Sonia plus 4% or something like that.
Okay.
So, and the good news about it's the same as us having an overdraft. Football clubs are strange beings in the sense that the money that comes in is very, very lumpy. You get a big wad of money just before the start of the season from the Premier League, which is the money advanced by Sky. You've received all of your season ticket money. That tends to come in a relatively concentrated period of time. You can go. It'll be both. You can go 5 weeks without a home match. For a variety of circumstances, international breaks, cups, and bits and pieces get in the way. So the money coming in is very lumpy. The money going out is fairly constant because you've got to go and pay your monthly payroll.
Yeah. Well, so when people say net debt, I mean, on on the accounts, it sort of suggests it was 25 million because we had 30 million in the bank on the 1st of June, and we had a 55 million pound loan which hadn't been paid off. You know, does that mean after it been paid off, unless we'd used on the 8th of August, potentially we had no net debt? Or do you include, when we talk about net debt, all of the money we owe for the transfers, or a net amount, how much we owe for players?
Well, I do both, because UEFA have this thing called football net debt, which says that the amount of money that you owe is what you owe to the banks plus what you owe to other football clubs for transfers, less any money you've got on your bank account, less any money that you are owed from player sales. So West Ham had a football net debt figure of 173 million because they bought a lot of players in 22-23. They spent 184 million pounds recruiting new players, but the vast majority of that was on credit.
And that takes away, that 174, the figure you just used, takes away the 100 million we got for Declan Rice.
Well, that's before, because these figures are dated the 31st of May, and you sold Declan a wee bit later.
But with the MSD money, was it not the case that they would offer a line of credit more as 50 million, and you would only pay interest on what you took? Does West Ham say they took?
Yeah, they took. They say
took
in the accounts
the full
they paid,
money.
They paid 55 million off in August. They say. So I guess the last bit, and we're going. I'm conscious of time. Move on for some questions. I know from pick out ones that haven't been answered, because I think you've answered a lot of them already. The player registration. So when we sold Declan Rice, so obviously there's the post activities that happened after the 31st, and it talks about that our net spend on transfers was 4.7 million, or 4.67 to be precise, with a further net of 12.6 million contingent on future events, obviously add-ons. And that surprised some people, because most people thought we had a surplus, and maybe this is the danger of following the papers too much. We know it was on record that we sold Declan for 100 million or 105 with add-ons. We sold Vlasic, we sold Scamacca. Most of these figures are in the press. Then when you took the money we spent on Kudos, etc., according to the press and everyone else, we had 17 million pound we didn't spend. This suggests the opposite way. Actually, we spent 4.7 million than we had, and which some people go, I don't believe financial accounts. Is it possible to sort of not? Well, I'm thinking of a posh word to say.
Is it possible to massage the numbers?
Massage the numbers, Kieran. Yes,
it's always possible. The reason why the accounts are audited, so you would have expected the auditors would have checked, and there's not that many numbers to check.
There's not, is it?
You've got 7 or 8 contracts going either way. So you'd expect that figure to be fairly accurate.
Okay. So it just shows you that we shouldn't always rely on the figures we're told in the press. I mean, they're always leaked and everything, but we shouldn't always.
A lot of the time you've got clubs deliberately leaking single numbers to the press.
Yeah.
Because they want to...
Or favoured social media accounts.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't know what you mean. No.
I don't.
And I see, probably not that interesting, but they finally paid Spartak Moscow. I didn't quite get where they paid a loan fee of £430,000 on the 7th of June, and 21,000 of interest. The payment had been previously forbidden because of sanctions imposed on Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, interesting words, but was settled following a change of ownership of the club, an instruction received from FIFA. does that mean what? Spartak Moscow is owned by a non-Russian entity now? Is that what they're suggesting?
It seems that it does seem very strange, but as soon as you start believing anything that comes out of the mouths of FIFA, we've all got problems, haven't we?
Perhaps it was owned by like Putin's brother-in-law, and he sold it to his cousin, who wasn't directly related to Putin. Perhaps it was something like that. I don't know.
I know they took us to court. Anyway, we're going to quickly move on, see if there's any questions. So Nigel, get ready.
Get ready for what?
Well, to read anything that's on Facebook that we
didn't
asked.
know you was asking questions.
Well, that's why I'm giving you one now. But
Go on.
Now,
seen any good bands recently, Kevin?
Well, I saw From the Jam just before Christmas. And the Skids, who were absolutely brilliant.
Blimey, the Skids.
I saw the Ruts. The Ruts were absolutely brilliant. I'm going to see Depeche Mode next week, or the week after, I think it is. So, I've got a few lined up. ABC at the ABC
You've lost me now.
Oh, really?
I'm not an ABC fan. Yeah,
well, I'm not a fan, but you look back, actually they were a lot better than I gave them credit for at the time, is my view.
Do you just keep on calling Kieran Kevin? Every time you say Kieran, I hear Kevin.
Do I? Oh, yeah. Right, sorry.
Can't even get our guest names right. I'm sorry, Kieran. Right, this time. It's Facebook Twitter question time, where you, the 8 listeners, get to ask us and Kieran some questions. These are only for you, Kieran, actually.
Okay.
And I don't know if you'll be able to answer this. The first one from Gary Prince: increase in number of employees from 726 to 790. What is that down to? I'm not sure you can answer that.
I think there is a breakdown of where those jobs have been created.
Media department, probably.
Probably. And he also asked, Gary Prince, why did we, and I don't know where he's picked this up, but I did see it, why did we accelerate the £30 million due on the Declan Rice transfer at a cost of 1.8 million?
Because the club wanted
cash.
They wanted the cash to pay off MSD, in all probability. Because they probably worked out that they were better off, because they'd end up paying a lower rate of interest on the money advanced on the Declan Rice deal than the rate of interest they were paying to MSD. So it made sense.
Mark Hunter asks you, how can we monetize the brand to get us anywhere close to the likes of Spurs?
Start winning things.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Or appear in Ted Lasso.
Yeah. I mean, how much of your soul do you want to sell?
We'll sell everything. We'll sell our grandmother, apparently.
We have a parody account called AI Sean, whose real name is Nick. I don't know why he calls himself AI Sean, but he likes to give me wind me up on social media, Kieran. He says, even Kieran, Sean and Nigel, Happy New Year to you all. Does Kieran think Chris Hughton would have let Kudos play tomorrow if West Ham had been playing any other team apart from Brighton? Yeah, I've no non-finance one.
We'd be absolutely because we tried to sign Kudos before he joined you.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah, he's a fantastic looking player. I'm looking forward to seeing him. Because I'm going along to support my team, but you still want to see good football, regardless of which shirt they're wearing. This will really upset Nigel. I saw Eden Hazard play once at the Amex, and I swear his feet didn't actually touch the grass. He just floated about 2 inches above it, and I've never seen one man. And he didn't break into a sweat either. He was just effortlessly destroyed us. And sometimes you got to accept you're in the company of a bit of genius.
He also asked another non-finance question. What's been Kieran's favourite European away day in Brighton's European League campaign?
Well, I'll have to go for Athens because I don't remember anything of Amsterdam.
Yeah, I don't think she listens to this podcast. You can tell us.
What goes on tour stays on tour.
Exactly, yeah.
Next one. Grant Croxford says, how much of their own money, I think I know the question, but they want you to say it, how much of their own money can Sullivan and Kredinsky put in the club to use towards transfers in January?
Well, they can put in as much money as they want. There is no limit. Then there's that second issue of how much counts towards the Premier League's financial fair play. Now, because Kretinsky put in that £125 million in 21-22, that doesn't expire for 3 years.
Yeah.
So they can put in as much money to fund deals, but it won't contribute towards improving FFP.
If I know what's going on, I think it's unlikely. I mean, they're looking for a new investor, and they've got Rothschilds helping them. Project Phoenix, I think, or Gold Phoenix, something like that. And they're looking for they're in talks with an American investor that's a gaming multi-millionaire, but they've got other irons in the fire as well. From my understanding, is they want an extra investor to spread the load and spread the burden rather than have one overall majority shareholder, and that includes Kredinsky.
Yep.
He's if you look at his shareholdings, he's a minority investor in nearly everything he does, apart from his, EHP, massive European energy conglomerate. Apart from that,
apart from his Russian pipelines, you mean?
Yeah, let's not talk about that. Richard Dodd says, "Happy New Year to everyone, including Kieran. Which team is best suited with FFP in mind, and who is the worst situated for FFP? Where do West Ham sit between them?"
Probably the club best suited is Spurs, because they only spend 39% of their income on wages historically. So they've actually got an awful lot of wiggle room. The club in the worst position is Everton, closely followed by Nottingham Forest. Manchester United aren't too far behind. I would say that West Ham are in the top half of the table in terms of flexibility, though. As far as the January window is concerned, they're certainly in a lot better position than a significant number of clubs. Chelsea have to sell before they buy. I think that's Manchester United can't buy unless they loan. Newcastle, they can only realistically loan or spend a small amount, because they've spent a lot of money. West Ham have got a degree of flexibility because of the sale of Rice.
Yeah. And the last question from the rest of them have been answered. So if you did put a question in, you should have heard it has been answered. We've answered that beforehand. In Kieran's view, what was the worst financial decision in moving to the London Stadium? Richard asks.
I think the worst decision was to do with the non-match income, the catering deals, and so on. I think, but they got such a good deal from the rental point of view that I think they were sort of giving a few concessions back to LDC.
Yeah,
actually, I couldn't. Obviously, because of going through the Olympic Stadium move and everything else, what you may not realise is I think the worst bit they did was when they moved us, West Ham's own figures were they would only get 50,000 to go there.
Yeah.
So that was the figure that West Ham used through their own analysis, bearing in mind we only used to get 30,000 to 35,000 at Upton Park, sometimes less than 30,000 for a non-glamorous cup game.
Yeah.
So what they did was we had to go to a sales centre to buy our season ticket, and what they did is that they allowed you to buy extra. So actually, we were at near enough 94% of our tickets were season ticket holders.
Yeah.
And I think West Ham are now paying the price for that sales tactic.
Yeah, they are.
And that is the worst decision. Because of, as you highlighted earlier, the likes of Liverpool may have a 60. At Upton Park, we had a maximum of 21,000 season ticket holders in a 35-seater stadium, 3,000 away fans.
Yeah.
They've slightly reduced the season ticket holders down to about 49,000, 50,000 now, from a high of 54,000.
They don't like us where I am. They think in the West Ham, which is more corporate, they think it's too cheap for what I buy my ticket for at 700, and they want to slowly sort of cleansing of
Yeah, but it's not that. Also,
the
it
cheap
shows
seats.
what it exposes. So when you look at games at the London Stadium, you will see the white dots of empty seats.
Well,
And-
not tomorrow when Kieran's there though.
Well, maybe, but you will see a lot of white dots of empty seats, and
Yeah,
that is because in certain areas, even where I sit, the seat is so cheap
Yep.
that actually people will buy it just to go 10 times a year.
Yeah, I did offer Kieran a free ticket. I said, "Have you got a ticket tomorrow? Because I'm probably could get you a ticket for tomorrow." Anyway, thanks, Kieran. I asked for 40 minutes of your time, and you've given us far more than that. So we're bringing it to an end now. Let's talk about football just as and then do a plug for your podcast and all your other stuff. Obviously, we're all going to the game tomorrow. We're missing Kudos and Agur. We don't know about Paquetá. He's almost definitely out because he's got a knee or a calf injury. He's going to miss the game. So we're missing a lot of our main players. We beat you at your place, Kieran.
Good. Yeah. Did a number on us that day.
What's your heart what does your heart and head say on this one? Give us a prediction.
Lewis Dunk is suspended. Igor, our other centre half, he's injured. So we got nobody in defence. I think it will be a relatively painless victory for West Ham.
Oh,
We've
really?
not kept a clean sheet since April.
Oh wow! Right, okay. That's not what I was expecting to say.
I don't think it'll be 0-0. I think
This is
it'll
what
be.
Manchester United said to us. I mean, funny enough, when we talk to Manchester United fans, they're just so down on themselves at the moment. With maybe Arsenal fans too after what happened yesterday. But
And we will fanny about at the back with the ball.
okay, all right,
So
we'll take that.
So I'd expect a lot of pressing from the West Ham.
Nigel, what do you think? How do you see it going down? You're going to
Well, we've had some success with teams that funny about at the back.
yeah, but we're losing three of our big players.
Yeah, but I mean, I was heartened by what I saw at Arsenal.
Well, I suppose we lost
with
Paquetá,
Paquetá going off,
most of it.
and the fact that we only had 20% of the ball and still managed to put in what we would call a
That was
decent
just-
performance.
That was just ridiculous.
So obviously it'd be different against Brighton. Head and heart actually are probably in unison. I'm still worried
Yeah, we always
about
are.
Brighton because of the hoodoo they have on us.
Yes.
This strange. Obviously, you've still not lost at the London Stadium.
We've
Right.
not lost in the Premier League. I remember us getting absolutely. I think you've tated us. Oh no, you're right.
No,
we've not lost.
that was
we've not.
Upton
that
Park.
That was Upton Park.
Yes.
Yeah. You tated us
It's
6-1.
the 6, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that was Upton Park. You're thinking going back to 2011, 2012 or something like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd know what I fancy a 2-2 draw.
Oh, you like your two Desmond 2-2?
Yeah, I do like my Desmonds. Yeah, that was a great programme.
I'm going for 1-0 win as I usually go and trying to go on averages. I would love to do it. We can't get fifth. I think we're 9 points off Spurs, but you know what? What we're on 33 points.
33. I think we're 6 off Spurs.
36. We would be only 4 points away from safety, Nigel.
Well, yeah, but you say that, but I think on the law of averages says in the last 10 years you've only needed 35 to stay
we
up
could
as
be
an
safe.
average.
Wow.
So yeah.
Anyway, Kieran, thanks for being our guest. I'm sure when the counts are out next year, we'll invite you back again for your annual visit on More Than Just a Podcast. What we both, Nigel and I, are avid listeners, listen to Price of Football. What else do you want to plug? I mean, if you like finance, you want to hear your dog Finley talk about wonky chops. Is that right?
That's right.
Listen to
yeah.
the Price of Football. It's I've learned a lot about finance listening to your podcast.
It's not. Yeah, there's 1,000,001 football podcasts. I do it with stand-up comedian Kevin Day. Some people might remember him because he used to do Match of the Day too. And we're just two blokes going down the pub having a moan. Except we're having a moan about agents and how Chelsea are getting away with it, but effectively it's a lot of the stuff which we've just covered. So yeah, I do that with Kevin for reasons we don't understand. It's very popular. We've had well over 10 million downloads of that. We've just had a book published called Unfit and Improper Persons: An Idiot's Guide to Running a Football Club. I did actually send it to a couple of club owners, and I got some really stroppy emails back.
Oh, really?
Yeah, got no sense of humour.
Did you send it to Karen?
I didn't, no.
Oh.
I'm on good terms with West Ham.
I know you are. You get on with Katara, don't you?
Have you never thought of doing a football podcast? I've often wondered that listening. Like sometimes, I listen to the football chat, and you then go on about how Guy don't like talking about football, and I'm thinking, well, actually, I prefer it if you talk more about football.
There's many people better equipped and with more knowledge than us. Whereas I'll back myself in my area to, and we're listened to in a huge number of football clubs themselves, because I will get phone calls and emails. You've said this about us. We're not happy about this. I've been sued by football clubs. I've been sued threatened with suing with some of the gambling companies as well. So we get under their skin.
So have me and Sean, fun enough. That was a surreal day when West Ham run me up, threatening to take me to court.
Yeah, and agents. Ravel Morrison's agent once sent me a cease and desist letter.
Bloody hell.
Agents can get very stroppy. They can get very stroppy indeed and threaten legal action. So it's all fun. But and I guess with what did the Brighton Palace? It was a draw, wasn't it? I was just listening to this morning. Where you'd recorded it for New Year's Day today, and you still didn't know the answers. You were wise and pre-recorded all your stuff. Yeah.
So it was 1-1. It's been 1-1. Last 5 seasons at Selhurst, it's been 1-1 every time.
Yeah, so. No bragging rights.
Is that to keep both sides happy? Do you think?
Well, it keeps both. Yeah, it was quite calm after the match.
I don't know if you push up one quick question in on this,
and then we go right.
And then we go. Is that the rivalry with Palace? Now, when the question's been asked before, I've always explained it that it stemmed from an argument between Alan Mullery and Terry Venables in the 1970s.
Yeah.
Am I right when I say that?
Yeah, they didn't like each other. They were both at Spurs. Yeah.
Yes.
So Venables was the sort of the Trevor Brooking style player. He was a ball, whereas Mullery was more Billy Bond style. Sort of more of a defensive midfield player, hard tackler, and so on. And Mullery didn't like all of the attention that Venables got. Then they became managers of Palace and Brighton. We were drawn against each other. It was in the second round of the FA Cup in 1976. We're all old enough to remember plenty of replays. So first match was a draw, second match was a draw, third match, neutral territory. It was at Stamford Bridge, about 50,000 there. We had a penalty sort of midway through the second half. Our captain scored. The referee disallowed it for one of the Palace defenders encroaching into the penalty box. Had to be retaken. The keeper saved it. Palace went down the other end, 1-1-0. Mullery absolutely lost it. So he went, at the end of the match, he went steaming across to the Palace fans, emptied out his pockets, threw them the small change. He goes, "That's all you're fucking worth, Palace." And then after, we were all watching this, of course, at the other end, and afterwards, World War III took place. It really kicked off because the police weren't what policing was like in the 70s.
Yeah.
So it was very lively, and that's how it all started. So it is a relatively new, but we hate them and they hate us. But just like you've got mates who are Chelsea fans and Spurs fans and Arsenal fans. You can still
I've
work
even got
with them.
friends that are Millwall fans. So.
Anyway, we've
Right,
got to release you back to the Baroness. Otherwise we're going to get in trouble like everyone else. Kieran, thanks for being our guest on More Than Just Podcast yet again and giving up your time. And we'll talk to you next year. Have a great 2024.
And you guys, and enjoy yourself tomorrow.
Yeah, whoever wins.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll give you a wave.
Okay, cheers.
Bobby Moore. more than just a podcast. Bobby Moore, more than just a podcast.
Hey kids, what do you think about finance?